on victory ships, they have their own club. The Museum of Science and Industry has their own club. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office has their own group of volunteers ready to help serve them, and they actually serve as a club. So if individuals are actually interested in getting an amateur radio license, there are a lot of resources in the area where you could go to these clubs, indicate that you're interested. We all hold training sessions, we all hold exam sessions, and we're a friendly group of people. Obviously, we like to talk.
You like to talk.
So we would be on the radio. So anyone is welcome to take a look at this. You can find us on the internet and or in the phone book. Give us a call. We'll be glad to help you out.
You know, if people wanted to come down to Sun City Center, could they, if they didn't live there, could they come down and see your station and check it out?
Absolutely. We have quite a nice station down in Sun City and an almost duplicate kind of station in Kings Point, just in case one gets damaged in a hurricane. And we welcome visitors to come down. We're open every weekday morning from about 9 until noon, and on some afternoons. We always have a host at the facility, which is an old town hall, and we welcome anyone who's interested to come in. In fact, we do have some members of our clubs who are not residents of Sun City.
Now that's in the same building as the Rollins Theater, right?
That's correct.
So people, if they don't know where the old town hall is, it's the same building as Rollins Theater.
Same building as Rollins Theater. And we have a series of beam antennas and dipoles and all kinds of radios set up there. But we will welcome anyone from outside the area. You don't have to be a resident to take a training class or take an exam. And if you're interested in providing emergency communications, there's even an option for a non-resident to join our club.
What's the significant difference between ham radio and CB radio?
Well, historically, there was no difference. CB radio, or 11-meter radio, used to be part of the amateur bands. And then in the, I think it was late 60s, that was broken away and you got your separate license without an examination for CB. And now since that time, you don't need any license at all for CB. The difference is CB radio is basically AM mode, amplitude modulation. You're limited to 4 watts of power. And so it has a very short range, maybe 2 or 3 miles for the typical CB set. So it's really meant for travelers in distress, or other emergency use, if you would. But you don't need a license for CB, but your range is severely limited.
I probably was one of the earliest CB people because, quite honestly, I didn't have to take the test.
Yes.
And I could still have a radio in my car. I was in sales. I traveled a lot, and it was important. And, you know, when I first got on CB, it was very polite. And I don't know whether it was because a lot of the people had been ham operators before, but it became a disaster. After one Christmas, when the sets got really cheap, everybody got one. And then profanity, everything, it just really went downhill in a hurry. What prevents this from happening in the ham system?
Well, basically, you must be licensed to be able to talk on the ham radio frequencies. And everyone has a call sign. My call sign is W1WAB, or Whiskey 1, Whiskey Alpha Bravo, if you want to say it phonetically. Basically, amateur radio operators police themselves. We're not going to talk to anyone who doesn't have an amateur radio license call sign or refuses to give it on the air. There are also severe penalties from the Federal Communications group on people who interfere with amateur radio or use the frequencies improperly. So basically, there is a code. Everyone is very polite. You give your call signs, and unlicensed stations are not tolerated or permitted.
You know, that's the way it was in CB at the beginning.
That's correct.
But it deteriorated because so many people were able to buy a set under $100, $150, and it just went downhill. It amazes me that either the operators or the federal government had been able to keep this so clean.
Well, again, it's self-policing. We monitor these things. There's an enforcement bureau. If you go to the FCC website and take a look, you'll see that every once in a while there's a trucking firm that attempts to get on 10 meters instead of 11 meters, which is an amateur radio band, and use it to dispatch their trucks. And these individuals are inevitably detected, caught, and fined.
there's enough
And the
people
fines,
watching
the
for it.
there's enough people watching to protect our amateur bands. The amateurs are interested in protecting their rights and to keep the bands open for emergency traffic and for the use of the hobby.
Out of curiosity, what would stop that trucking firm from getting all their people certified and using that band?
Well, you as an individual can get a license. The trucking firm cannot get a license.
Oh,
There's a difference. In other words, say you were an ambulance company, so, you know, you would get a business class license for your ambulances. You would have a series of special band radios outside the amateur bands that would enable anyone who's employed by your company to use those radios, well, much like a taxi firm.
okay.
But if say you went to each of your truckers and said get an amateur license, they may do so and they could talk to each other. But you're not allowed to conduct any commercial business over the air.
Oh, all right.
You couldn't say, please go pick up a load at this other station.
Hence amateur band. You can't
Amateur
conduct
is the key.
commercial business over it?
Yeah, no commercial business. And that's why it's called amateur. For example, I'm the manager of what's called the EagleNet, the National Traffic System Net. People will remember radiograms from the old days.
Oh, yeah.
Western Union is out of business, but radiograms still exist.
Really?
Amateur radio operators are happy to provide radiogram communication throughout the United States to any individual you wish to send a radiogram to. It could be a happy birthday message. It could be, we're arriving next week for vacation. All you have to do is contact an amateur radio operator. He will take your National Traffic System radiogram message and transmit it through relays across the United States for delivery at the ultimate point. So you don't even need your cell phone if you would, if you're willing to wait a day or two for the message to make it across the United States. But that service still does exist, and we don't charge anything for it. Again, we are amateurs.
Well, you know, I also remember in the early days of CB, if I was running late, a lot of times I'd call somebody on the CB and say, I need a telephone relay.
Yes.
And those folks would pick up and they'd say, okay, who do you need to call? And I'd be able to have them call and say, I'm going to be running late, or I could call back to my office and say, call so-and-so and have it done. Will ham operators do this for you?
Yes, we do it in two ways. Let's say you were in your car and you were going to be late, or say you were at the grocery store is a better example, and you forgot the shopping list at home and couldn't remember what it was.
That
And,
happens, in fact, yesterday.
for example, there's a number of keys on here, just like your telephone. We have what's called an auto patch, and you could press a number of keys to get access and your phone number, and you could actually call your home phone through the radio and ask your wife to read you what that shopping list was.
Really?
Yes. Now, many repeaters have that service. In
Is
addition,
there an extra cost? for
no
that?
no charge to us. Some clubs do charge. In addition, there are a number of high-frequency nets that are designed for specific groups. For example, there's the Maritime Mobile Service Net, and this targets ships at sea, pleasure craft, other boaters, wherever they may be.
Yeah, I've got a maritime radio.
A maritime radio. But of course, maritime radios are only good for about 20 miles. They're VHF radios.
Okay.
Very limited range. You may have seen the story about those two boaters who just ran out of gas just off the coast of Miami and found out they were out of range of their VHF radio. If they had an HF radio like this, which is long range, this radio net, which runs 24 hours a day, is listening for boats in distress or boats who wish to pass traffic. And for example, many of them might say, please pass a phone message to a certain phone number for me. I'm arriving at Baton Rouge tomorrow morning.
Oh, really?
And so this kind of service is done on a regular basis in ham radio. I'll give you another example. The Salvation Army runs a net called the Saturn net, if you would, SA for Salvation Army. And that net activates during emergencies, and they'll relay messages from missing family members or other individuals that may be displaced in a natural disaster.
You know, I was thinking when we were holding that up, I was thinking, you know, when a disaster hits, the worst thing, families just cannot figure out what happened to their people in that disaster
Yes.
area. You can go forever to try and figure out where they are, who they are, what. For $125 and a $14 investment for 10 years, I could have contact with my people up north and let them know where I am, that I'm safe.
That's correct, or you can find any amateur to do it. In fact, one of the things we've set up at Sun City